Hi, I'm Sharon Bill. Welcome to my YouTube channel and welcome to my Theory Tuition series. I'm nearly at the end of this Grade 1 series where I'm leading you step by step through the ABRSM Theory grades, working through the Music Theory and Work Practice workbooks with you. There are loads of resources available to help you on my website. If you go to sharonbill.com, you'll find some free PDF information sheets that are available in US letter or A4 to accompany each step of this series. I'll be referring back to those lots and lots of times. Everything you need to know is on those downloads. There's also a page with links to all of my YouTube video tutorials. You can access all of those on my website, and you can also find some information about the books that I have available. Particularly, I have a book available that I've written, How to Take Your ABRSM Music Theory Exam. It's a guidebook to help you to take your exam with lots of hints and tips and techniques of how best to prepare for the exam and then how to actually sit the exam itself. This one is for particularly grades 1, 2 and 3. Grades 4 and 5 will also be available soon. So let's crack straight on, and we're moving on to section P towards the end of our workbook. So if you turn in your workbook to page 22, and we're on this section here, composing and answering rhythm, and it refers to this download section P, which has got all of the information that you need to help you with this. There's quite a lot of information in this last little section. It falls into two parts. We'll look at this first part at the moment, which shows you rules for beaming, which must be followed. It refers back to what we covered in section F. So I suggest you perhaps just pop back to the page F and also the work that you did in your workbook, just to refresh your memory. If I just find that sheet, and the first part of this was covered here where we talked about beaming quavers and semiquavers together. We're now going to add to that knowledge a few extra little bits and bobs. This first part is vitally important for every aspect of writing music, and it's with a view to composing and answering rhythm. However, in the exam coming in 2018, they've changed the layout of the paper, and this particular question will no longer occur in the actual exam. However, it's such a vital part of music theory that we need to look at it, and so although you won't necessarily be fulfilling the exercises in the exam, you still need to absolutely be flexible with a working knowledge of these rules which must be followed for beaming together notes. It's all spelled out for you on this little download here, and it's also itemised. If we just turn over the page to page 23, there's quite a lot of information to go through. In principle, it's mostly the same that we covered in section F. I'll just make sure you can see there on screen. And so we know that we beam together any combinations of quavers or eighth notes and quavers and semiquavers or eighth notes and 16th notes that make up one beat. So we're always grouping in one beat groups. We've already discussed how there's an exception where we've got 4 quavers or 4 eighth notes which could be replaced by a minim equivalent. They can all go together. We've already covered that. There's just a couple of things to add into that knowledge now. One is which is this, where if you've got a whole bar of quavers or eighth notes in a bar of 3/4, we can just simply beam all of those together at a glance. If it's a mixture of quavers and semiquavers, then we can't. We need to just revert back to this one beat unit of a beam. However, it's all quavers, we can just slam them all together in one big long line. The other main point to notice is here, although we've been told that we can beam 4 quavers or eighth notes together, there's one time where this is not allowable, and that's when we're in a time signature of 4/4, you can never beam across the middle part of the bar. So although that is a rule that is acceptable in most cases, in this instance it can't be, and so we have to just break up the beam if that is necessary. I think the main reason for that is 4/4 is such a very long bar, we need to very easily see where the halfway point of each bar occurs, and we need to clearly see the divisions of where those accents in the music lie. Otherwise we just get a little bit lost in such a long and busy bar. Other than that though, everything's the same as it was before. So 16th notes or semiquavers will always be beamed together in a 1-beat group, and combinations of quavers and semiquavers or 8th notes and 16th notes must also be beamed together in 1-beat units. One other thing to think about is, we've talked about ties before, a tie adds note values together. Sometimes a tie is unavoidable, however, wherever possible we avoid a tie. So all that is a 1-beat, that's a half beat. So combined that makes 1.5. It's much easier to represent it. There's 1.5 beats. It's just a more simplistic way of writing. It's much easier to recognise. Imagine, somebody's going to have to play this, and we need to make the music as legible as possible so they can play it quite easily. Again, here, 1 tied to 1 makes 2, and it's much more simple to just give it a 2-beat note. And so in this exercise 1 here, we get the opportunity to have a go at putting those rules into practice. So just glance at the top of the page to check which rules to apply, or alternatively just check to your theory information sheet P. So for example, 2 half beats will be beamed together. We know that 4 half beats can be beamed together. I think I'll use a ruler for this one. It's quite a long beam, isn't it? It's bound to go wonky if I don't. There we go. And so on. So just have a little glance through. It does get a little bit sticky towards the end in this last few little exercises. However, I do recommend that you have a go, even if you have to sort of really scratch your head and think about it for a moment. We write it in pencil. It doesn't matter if it's wrong. You can always erase it and have another go, but you'll learn so much better if you just try and learn by your mistakes. It's always trial and error, and in this particular instance it's always better to just have a go even if you get it wrong. So press pause, have a go at these exercises in your own time, and then just re-access into the video when you feel like you've had a good go at it, and I'll work through it with you. So I'm hoping you've been brave and you've had a go at working through these exercises. So let me just go through these with you now and just show you how the rules that we've just been talking about in this information sheet and also at the top of your page, it's all there for you. You've got it twice actually, so there's plenty of reference points for you to look at. So 3, 4, we know we can beam those all together as shown here. So we can just quickly slam a big long line. In fact, I think what I'll do, I'll just beam them all quickly, and then there we go. A little bit wonky. Perhaps you should use a ruler. I'm just trying to be quick for you. Okay, so here we know, like we learned before, these 4 half beat notes can be beamed together. So we can join all of those together. A 1-beat note doesn't change. Be careful you don't fall into the trap of just sort of trying to beam everything, because if we change that, if we beam that, we change the note value from a full beat to a half beat, don't we? There's no tail on it, so it doesn't join up. Same again here. We've got 4 which we can beam together. Now let's just be careful, because we know we can't beam over the halfway point of a bar. So let's just figure out where that is. There's beat 1, there's beat 2, there's the halfway point. So we know we're okay still. We're not going to break any of the rules of theory. by beaming over the halfway point. So all that is pretty straightforward. There we go, and then don't forget our 2-beat note at the end. Now this is the one where we're just going to have to think a little about it. So the 1 beat doesn't change. Now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 half-beat notes. We can't put all of those together because it's only in a bar of 3, 4 that we can put those all together. So we can't apply that sort of quick fix. So we know we're going to have to do a 4 and a 2. However, if we do 4 and then 2, think about where the halfway point is in the bar. There's beat 1, there's beat 2. That's the halfway point. We can't beam over that. So we can't do a 4 and then a 2. We're going to have to do a 2 and then a 4. So we'll have 2 half beats joined together there. And then that leaves us the last half of the bar with a clear run. And we can beam all of those together. And it's absolutely obvious where that halfway point is. Okay, so now we're on to F. So here we have a combination of half beats and quarter beats. So we have to beam those into a 1-beat group. So half, quarter, quarter will belong together. So we can easily see each unit of a beat. That's that. And that leaves us with 2 half beats which make another. There we go. Okay. Actually, I just realised, just to be absolutely accurate, we need our bar lines at the end, don't we? How very naughty of me. It's always best to be absolutely sure you've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. We don't want to lose any marks just by a few silly little omissions. Okay, so now this is the last 2 where we really have to think, and actually this is now bringing into play, if you'll pardon the pun, the concept of trying to avoid ties wherever possible. And so let's just look at what we can do to just tidy this up, because there's no doubt about it, that is really, really difficult to read. So we've got a 1 beat tied to a half. And so that's a classic example of this little rule here. A 1 beat tied to a half is much more easily represented by a dotted crotchet. Now it looks like we've written 1 note less because we don't need this note now, because that note has been replaced by the dot, because there's our 1 beat, there's our half, so we now don't need that bit at all. Now this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quarter beats. We know that we must group these into the group of a 1, so we're going to end up with a 4 and a 2. However, we don't want to have an odd 2 at the end, because that's like half a beat hanging around unaccounted for. And what we have to do, you always have to think of a little housekeeping, and we need to tidy up. We've got 1.5 so far. We've got to tidy up this remaining half a beat before we can go on. We've got half a beat hanging here waiting to be completed. So if we do 2 quarter beats here, that will make a half, and then you can see we've got 1 beat there, and that there makes 1 beat. So now we're nicely tidied up and we're ready to carry on with the next beat. So there's 1 beat, half, quarter, quarter makes another beat, and now we're ready to move on to so I'm adding up as I go along, another beat, and that will give us our 3. So we've got, instead of a 4 and a 2, we want the 2 first to tidy up this half beat, and then we've got 4 quarter beats left. Just make those a bit bigger. And so we can easily see, we're always thinking about tidying up any half beats so that when we're beaming, we're showing exactly where each new beat starts. So it's very easy to play and see our timing at a quick glance. Now in this last exercise, we've got a 2 tied to a quarter, and we can't change that because if we added a dot that would become 3 beats, and we've changed the music and suddenly we've got too many notes or too many beats, and so there's no alternative but to keep that tie. However, we've got quarter, quarter, half, which all together makes a full beat, and so we would beam those together just as we would before. It's exactly the same principle as we've just done here. Don't let the fact that there's a tie confuse things. It's exactly the same principle. So we've got quarter, quarter, half, and we have to keep the tie, but it's so much more easy to read. We can see exactly where each unit beat falls. There we go. So let's put our bar lines in to finish. Now that is quite a tricky little bit, and it's just practice really. So if you don't feel like you've quite clicked with that, just rub it out and have another go and just go back over that video. And this paves the way for the next part of the section, which we'll look at in the next video. So just make sure you've got to grips with that before we move on. Thanks for watching. I hope that's been helpful to you. Give me a like, that would be fab. And if you could subscribe to my channel, then you'll be sure to keep in touch with everything that's in the pipeline. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.